I don't think we have to have the politicians we prefer in office to imagine that God will move.
Yeah.
I think that's really it's a complete capitulation on the part of the church.
Yeah.
Our prayer life, our relationship with God should be so significant that it changes the course of nations and empires.
Hey, I'm here with America's favorite pastor. I don't know if that's true or not. I just made that up.
I was going to say, you and me have that opinion.
You're at least my faith votes favorite pastor. One of my favorite pastors, a pastor to pastors.
Thank you.
Alan Jackson, so good to see you again. Glad you're here. So you are an outspoken person. There's no hiding it. I watched some of your stuff, especially around elections, and God's using you in a mighty way to speak to your church. What's some advice that you have to pastors who may be a little shy, they're gun shy about speaking out about these things? Why is it so important that they need to be speaking out on what they would say are political issues or biblical issues? What's your advice to them?
Well, there's a lot of layers to that. I think the thing that we hear most often is we don't want to be political.
Yeah.
And I don't really disagree with that. I'm not trying to advocate for parties or candidates. Particularly in local elections, that's a problem. On a national level, the parties have platforms. They have written down what they intend to do, what they will spend money to do.
Yeah.
And if you're a candidate running on a national party ticket, you're obligated to fulfill what's on those platforms. And
Yeah.
I think we have to talk about that. That's what shapes our culture.
Yeah.
And so to me, it isn't being political. It's talking about what's happening in our current culture. And that is very much a biblical assignment. That's exactly what the Hebrew prophets did. It's exactly what John the Baptist did. It's what Jesus did with so much of his dialogue. You know, the verse that is frequently quoted is in Acts chapter 1, when the disciples said to Jesus, post-resurrection, are you going to restore the kingdom to Israel now?
Yeah.
And he said, that's really none of your business.
Yeah.
And people say, see, Jesus refused to engage in politics.
Yeah.
I don't believe that's the right understanding of the passage. Jesus had already been asked that question, and he had answered it.
Yeah.
When he's coming into Jerusalem, Gospel of Luke, he's on the Mount of Olives, Jerusalem is in front of him. He said, your enemies are going to build an embankment against you. They're going to encircle you. They'll tear down every rock in this city. They're going to dash the heads of your babies against the stones. It's a prophecy like Jeremiah gave. The Babylonians are coming, and there's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
You didn't recognize the day of my coming to you, so now this is going to be the judgment. What his audience wanted was more of an Isaiah prophecy. When he went to Hezekiah and he said, I'm going to send the Assyrians back home.
Yeah.
That wasn't what Jesus had said. So when they came back to him again and said, okay, are you going to throw the Romans out? Asked and answered. I don't have to pick that up again, but you have to preach the gospel in the whole world.
Yeah.
So I think we have an assignment to tell the truth to our culture in our generation. If we continue in the lane we're on, murdering our babies, mutilating our children, redefining marriage, practicing immorality, and sanctioning it in the church, the judgment of God is coming.
Yeah, you're so right. That's some good advice to pastors because it gives them like, okay, here's the reality. And what I hear you say is it's Christ or chaos. And right now we've seen an absence of Christ and chaos ensue in our country. So that's really what's at stake for the pastor. What about the layperson? Maybe their pastor's a little, not speaking out on the things. What would be some of the advice you give to that layperson?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I've been in 20 cities in the last 15 months talking to groups of pastors and church leaders. In most churches, the pastor is really not the seat of authority. Most churches had pastors before the present version, and they'll call a pastor after the present version.
Yeah.
There's a board of deacons, there's a presbytery, there's some formal and informal power structure.
A committee of committees.
If we want to change the churches, we're going to have to change the hearts of the business people, the housewives, the folks that comprise the churches. It is disingenuous to say, I'll be different when the pastor's different. If your pastor dishonors God, if he doesn't recognize the uniqueness of Jesus, the virgin birth, the crucifixion and the resurrection, leave. It's not a church.
Yeah, it's those essentials they got to hold to. That's it.
But beyond that, the people in the building are going to shape the messaging.
Yeah.
So don't wait for your pastor. Talk to your peer group. Start to share it with your friends.
Yeah.
You be the life in the church.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so good. Let me shift gears a little bit and ask you a question about prayer. and praying for those in authority, and even those that we don't like. What's your advice to Christians out there who want to pray, they just don't know how to pray for president, Congress, people they don't like?
How to pray for the people you didn't vote for.
Exactly. I like that.
That's the deal.
That's so good. Yeah.
Well, I think we are a bit idolatrous.
Yeah.
We think the persons that we prefer to be in office are necessary for there to be renewal or awakening or godliness.
Yeah.
The reality is those outcomes emerge from the people of God, not from politicians. You know, Daniel, in the book of Daniel, prays his way into these amazing experiences where God has a message for King Nebuchadnezzar, or God has a message for Darius, and it really is emerging from the prayers of people, not from the hearts of those pagan kings.
Right.
And so I don't think we have to have the politicians we prefer in office to imagine that God will move.
Yeah.
I think that's really it's a complete capitulation on the part of the church.
Yeah.
Our prayer life, our relationship with God should be so significant that it changes the course of nations and empires.
Man, that's so true. So, big election year.
Yep.
It's 2024. My Faith Votes. We don't take a partisan. We're nonpartisan. You know.
Good luck with that.
It's hard. We are challenging Christians to think biblically. So then the problem is, what do we do if there are two candidates, presidential candidates, that we don't agree with? How then shall we vote? Right? I've heard you say before, we're not voting for pastors.
It's true.
To the Christian out there that's afraid to cast that vote, how do they vote biblically then?
Well, I think first of all, like in a national election, usually we have a binary choice.
Yeah.
We have A and B.
Yep.
And we have to make a choice. To make no choice is to make a choice.
Yeah.
So if you say, I'm just not voting, you have capitulated.
Yeah.
You've given away any voice you have. Again, I think in the national election, it's not about a personality.
Yeah.
You can say, I don't like that individual's personality. They're snarky.
Mm.
What they're going to do is determined by the platform of that party. One party says, we're going to abort children up to the 9th month, full-term pregnancy. We've redefined marriage. It's not between a man and a woman. We're for gender modification on your children. I mean, all of those things are a part of the platform. That has nothing to do with whether you like the candidate, whether he poses in front of First Church with a Bible in his hand.
Yeah.
He's going to go support those things.
Yeah.
So be informed enough to know what the platforms are, and then stop the nonsense. I don't like the way you cut your hair. It's not relevant. I mean, it's complete foolishness. And we're going to have to get honest enough and have enough integrity.
Yeah.
We've been hiding behind all this other stuff, and it's disingenuous.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah. We're pastors. We're full of opinions. As
We have those.
We have those. I'm going to switch gears. Past couple Super Bowls, and I watch college sports. I see these ads called He Gets Us. It almost depicts Christianity as we're needy people, if I may, or maybe God is needy or something like that. What's your opinion on the He Gets Us ads?
Well, the dialogue I've heard has been in kind of two lanes. One is around just the cost in general, whether it's appropriate or inappropriate. And even the non-Christians like to pile on that and say, Christians have no business paying for a Super Bowl ad.
Yeah.
Nonsense.
Yeah, that's nonsense.
You know, I believe Christians should be extravagant in the proclamation of the gospel. And I realize there's a lot of diversity of opinion on what that means.
Yeah.
But, you know, there was a time in our nation's history where the finest buildings in most of our cities were the churches.
Right.
Because it was an expression of what we attached value to.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's typically either a business tower or a sports arena where we invest those monies. And I think we're wrong. We're putting churches in old box stores that are being repurposed.
Yeah.
You know, our church started with a tent. I'm not opposed to meager and simple things.
Right.
So, number one, I don't have any problem with the expenditure of the dollars. I think it's great that we show up in these high-profile cultural events and say Jesus is Lord. I'm not a big fan of the strategy they've chosen, of the theme of the ads.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think their representation of Jesus, to me, is exegetically accurate.
Yeah.
Well, I think Jesus expressed some calls to countercultural ideas. He did not identify. He didn't gather the most wicked, ungodly people. His message was to the house of Israel.
Yeah.
You know, by today's standards, that would be the church folks.
Yeah.
It's not the folks living outside the church.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he was very explicit. He said, I didn't come. I came to talk to the house of Israel.
Yeah.
I'm not helping a Syro-Phoenician woman.
Yeah.
I'm not going into the Greek and Roman cities. And those ads spin that in a very different way.
Mm-hmm.
So from my vantage point, I think the theme of them is a little misconstrued.
Yeah.
But I love the heart of it and the willingness to step into a new way. So
yeah. Of course, Christ gets us. The bigger question is, do we get him? I think that's the bigger question. So I think they may have missed that, an opportunity to say that. Again, My Faith Votes, we focus on low propensity Christian voters, getting them out to vote. Obviously, there's a lot at stake. At the heart of Pastor Alan Jackson, what do you think is one of the biggest things that's at stake in our nation right now?
Wow, that's it's such an important question, and there's so many facets to it. We have had more liberty and more freedom
Yeah.
for a longer period of time than any society in history.
Yeah.
And that has come, I believe, because we began with this Judeo-Christian worldview.
Mm-hmm.
And we understood a set of values. While it wasn't universally embraced, it was the set of values that formed the fabric of our culture, our legal system, our educational system. That's not just under assault. That is being very intentionally dismantled.
Right.
And if we don't say something, we will lose our liberty and freedom.
Yeah.
And I don't mean 2 decades from now. I think we could count that in months.
Yeah.
That if we don't find the courage to say, there's a difference in men and women. Marriage is between a man and a woman. No doctor should mutilate a teenager.
A child, yeah.
It's immoral. It's ungodly. The first rule of medicine is first do no harm.
Yeah.
It's wrong. We know it's wrong. We lack the courage to raise our hand and say that's nonsense.
Yeah.
I mean, we're having this battle in our own community about pornographic material in elementary schools.
Mm.
And people say you're for banning books. That's just wrong.
Yeah.
There is such a thing as age-appropriate learning. We all understand this. We don't sell alcohol in elementary schools.
Yeah.
We don't recruit for the Marines in elementary schools.
Exactly.
They don't have the emotional or physical maturity to make those decisions.
Yeah.
They don't need pornography.
Right.
And the church is going to have to use their voices, or we will lose our liberties and freedoms, and our grandchildren will suffer for it.
Yeah, and I think if anything, how fast all of this has changed in just the past 5 years. The fact that we have to be bold about gender. I would have thought I was joking if I told that to myself 5 years ago, you know. Pastor Alan, thank you so much for everything you do. You are such an encouragement to a lot of us, and we appreciate your courage to speak out. So God bless you and everything that you're doing.
Well, My Faith Votes is doing a wonderful thing in this nation.
Yeah.
You're a strength to the body of Christ and for the liberties and freedoms that we all value. So
Amen.
Don't grow weary in doing good.
Amen. I love it. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.